Retirement gives you more time, but your health determines how well you actually get to enjoy it. Managing our portfolio of physical and mental health is just as important as your financial portfolio. Welcome to the Next Chapter Retirement Podcast, where we discuss smart strategies for building and protecting wealth, health, and well being, helping retirees shape their next chapter into their best chapter. I'm your host, Mark Erickson. Each week, we help you navigate the big decisions that shape your future, from health and financial planning to Medicare and lifestyle design and everything in between. Let's go ahead and dive in. Today, I'm joined by Debbie Hellman, who has a background in nutrition, movement, and overall wellness. And we're going to focus on what really matters today: how to stay active, eat well, and feel your best in retirement. When people think about retirement, they often think about finances or travel, but I would argue that being healthy is perhaps the most important aspect of enjoying retirement and life in general. Debbie, great to have you on.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Mark.
Oh, my pleasure. Debbie, to start, what changes do you typically see in people's health and routines once they transition into retirement? Do you see any patterns or anything?
You know, most of my clients show up in my office dealing with a lot of pain that ends up limiting mobility, limiting stability. So their range of motion is reduced. They feel like they can't go and enjoy their time outdoors or do the activities that they want to do. And that's super common as we age. And the most important thing, obviously, is to start planning for that in your 20s. But that doesn't happen in our everyday situation. And in our current nutritional landscape, people go for convenience versus quality. And that leads to a lot of inflammation. And so inflammation can show up in the body as pain, or it can show up as accelerated aging. There's a term called inflammaging, basically how inflammation can age you. And so my goal is to help people reduce pain and inflammation and improve their mobility with stability and improve the quality of their lives. And we tackle that on a number of different fronts.
Awesome. And I think that with society in general and with people individually, I know it's true for me, often, we have good intentions, but sometimes that's as far as it gets. And, perhaps structure and early intervention may be one of the keys, would you say, to enjoying
Yes,
a happy retirement?
absolutely. But we can't go back to our 20s again and change our course of direction. We have to deal with where we are today. And it is possible. We all have a biological age, but the key is to reduce our metabolic age. So basically change the terrain in the body to turn the clock back in time. And that is possible to do. It sounds crazy, but again, by reducing inflammation and improving metabolic health, we can turn back the clock on how old our body perceives us to be.
Well, that is exciting, knowing that that's possible. I think we all want to turn back the clock. And Debbie, what are a few simple habits that retirees or people preparing for retirement might be able to build into their weekly routine to stay healthy without overcomplicating things?
Sure, and concentrating on not overcomplicating is important, because if it's too much to handle, people will give up. And I always focus on progress versus perfection. And so what I like to do is sit down one-on-one and evaluate what kind of toxicities are there in your environment that you can control, that you can begin to minimize and work towards eliminating. And these are things that become hormone disruptors and gut microbiome disruptors. And again, it's so easy, but if we take it one at a time, it's not overwhelming. So we look at toxicities and then we look at deficiencies. Is your nutritional intake giving you what your body needs? And so those are two big topics. And then movement that you mentioned in my intro, movement that's appropriate for the person. So someone who has been sedentary their whole life, I can't recommend that they start to run 3 to 5 miles a day or go to work out at the gym for hours a day. It's just not appropriate. I'm working with someone right now who is 86, who has never exercised ever a day in his life, and who is dealing with chronic pain. And so, little by little, like literally just getting up and walking out of the house and walking around his yard and getting some morning sunshine is very beneficial. It boosts happy hormones and it gets joints moving. I've got other people who have been lifelong athletes, and we just have to deal with avoiding inflammation and avoiding over exercising as we age.
Yeah, that is really important. I know I'm guilty of that. I used to be a very avid mountain biker, and then I blew up my ACL, and what a setback that was to my overall fitness. And and it really has been, it's been 2 years, and I'm still working on getting back to where I was. So I think everybody can identify with some aspect of that, whether they've been sedentary or were active, or maybe had sports injuries that could make it difficult.
I was speaking with my great aunt last month. She is 94 and she has never exercised. And she told me that she's going to a chair exercise class. And she said, Deb, you're not going to believe it. I'm building muscle at my age. And I think a lot of people think that once you get older, it's over. Like you can't be that person anymore. And I beg to differ. I would say, again, starting with small steps that are appropriate and individualized for you, and making sure that you're eating healthy, whole foods with minimal chemical exposures, meaning not a ton of processed foods, not a ton of, hopefully, not any pesticides, clean, filtered water. All of these make a difference on your cells, and that then leads to what we can do by turning back the clock on metabolic aging.
Wow. Yeah, I think it really is important to look at the body as a whole. And I love what you mentioned about that physical activity also has benefits for mental health as well by
Yeah.
releasing those endorphins. And I don't want this to turn into a commercial for chair yoga, but I thought that was an interesting example that people can use, body weight as a way to increase their strength. And I think that's particularly important as we age, because, falling risk is a huge thing. And if people can maintain their core strength and their leg strength, they're probably going to have better balance and mobility and be less inclined to suffer from one of those injuries.
Yes. And sadly, aging begins in our mid 20s. That's when things start to happen. And so, like I said, you can't go back in time to change decisions that you've made through your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, and your 50s, but we can make significant impact with small changes now. I'm almost 64, and my metabolic age, as tested with a panel, and I'm not a commercial here for the panel that I did, but it's through a doctor who was with the Cleveland Clinic, but now has his own longevity practice, and my almost 64 age metabolically is 41. So I want to talk to you
Wow.
about insurance rates for a 41-year-old instead of an almost 64-year-old. How about that?
All right. Wow, that is extraordinary. And I think we live in a society where there is so much risk of toxicity, where there's a significant risk of people's metabolic age perhaps being significantly higher than their
Exactly.
chronological age.
Yes, and that is common. And the other thing is that 93%, roughly, it might be 92.8, but we'll round to 93% of the American population is metabolically unwell. And that rolls forward into a whole series of disease states that once you're in is very hard to back your way out of. And so that's why I really focus on helping people improve their metabolic health.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point that you just made, Debbie, because I've seen this with all the people that I interact with, and I see different people's lives take very different trajectories. And it seems at some point that sometimes, unfortunately, people can reach a tipping point in their health where they can go, their health can take a very rapid negative turn that can result in them having to take, a lot of medications, which could produce their own toxicity, potentially, and side effects. And so, anyways, kind of a slippery slope. Not to say that they couldn't, turn that back potentially, but I think it's better to be preventative and to try to head that off before one does get over that tipping point and start sliding down that slippery slope.
Absolutely. And, if someone comes to me because they're having chronic knee pain, we figure out what the root of that is so they can get back out and do their active lifestyle again. But when someone comes with just chronic malaise, I like to dial in. And as you mentioned, if there's a lot of medications, I'm not a doctor, so I can never say, you have to stop taking these prescriptions. But working with their doctor, we can look at healthy, holistic alternatives for them to reduce that exposure. But you'd be surprised what the average person is exposed to in terms of chemicals, the number of chemicals throughout the day. And people are just unaware. And those chemicals wreak havoc within our bodies and disrupt normal cellular function, organ function, muscle function. Basically, stressors on the body, whether it's chemical, physical, or emotional, can disrupt the neuromuscular system, the gut microbiome, which is the basis for your immune system and your mental health. It's just something that the average person is not aware of, but these are changes that are not hard to make.
Yeah, and oftentimes people may just, they've been too busy with their career, their family to really focus on themselves. It seems to me that retirement would be a great time for people to have kind of renewed interest in improving their overall health. They have a little bit more time, and as I always say, we want their next chapter to be their very best chapter.
Yeah, and you want to have energy to play with your grandchildren and to travel and do your social activities. I also think hanging out with younger people is a great way to remind yourself of the energy that you can have. And so all of these social connections are just as important as what we put in or on our bodies.
Awesome. Awesome. Debbie, when it comes to physical activity, are there any type of activities you can think of that work for most people, say in their 60s, 70s, or older, especially those who aren't active gym goers?
That's a great question. Most people know how to walk. And walking at a light pace, a conversational pace, or a brisk pace, whatever is appropriate for you and your body, is fantastic. And it's also great to time that. So if you are dealing with any sort of metabolic challenges, if you've gained weight over the years and you want to look at trimming down, I'm not talking about becoming a stick figure, but if you just want to work on your metabolic health, then timing your walk to be right after you finish your largest meal will help reduce blood sugar spikes. I should carry on. Blood sugar spikes trigger an inflammatory process and can lead to insulin resistance. That's a big topic. We won't have to take a deep dive in that. I like to exercise in the morning because it gets my day started, but I'll often go out for a walk after dinner, and it really sets the pace for your body to calmly work through digestion and prepare for sleep. And sleep is also incredibly important and oftentimes becomes challenging as we get older. You may think that you need less, but if you're struggling to sleep, your body isn't having time to do repair at a cellular level because we repair when we sleep. That's the sort of rest and digest phase, but it's also clearing out debris, cellular debris in your brain. And so we've got to have good quality sleep. And when you allow for some light exercise at whatever time of day you choose, it will improve your sleep.
That's awesome. And I think just getting outside for the walk is going to be real beneficial as well for mental health. And I'm reminded that one of the new catchphrases today is that sitting is the new smoking.
Right.
And I think that's very true. And I think in this world we live in where there's screens absolutely everywhere, and we could easily just get into that Netflix and chill mode. Um, we've just got to schedule time to get outside, get in some good natural light, weather permitting, and be active. That's interesting that the timing has such an impact.
It does. But if your only time to walk is the morning, that's okay too, Mark. And you mentioned sunlight, early morning sunlight when you first wake up, and not through your window, but physically going outside begins to shift how your melatonin and cortisol works. And so it helps to set your circadian rhythm, which can also help with evening shutdown time and sleep. And if you have clean um, grass in your yard that hasn't been sprayed with chemicals, walking outside with bare feet on the grass is also very balancing for your body because we accept in our body the Schumann resonance of the earth, and it is calming for our nervous system. Also calming for our nervous system is to snuggle with a cat if you happen to have cats. I don't. I have noisy dogs, but the resonance, the frequency that a cat purrs will also calm your nervous system. And so managing stress, managing toxicity exposure, making sure we have addressed any deficiencies, all of these will prepare the body to be able to do these small things. And if these things are new, they may feel challenging. But again, baby steps.
Right, right. Gosh, that's really interesting. So go barefoot at the park.
Not necessarily the park, because I
Well,
think
because they might use pesticides. I see.
they're spraying, right? Clean
Yeah,
grass. And
yeah.
the other thing is also people really underestimate how much water they need to stay well hydrated. And that's really important. If you want to begin moving with a healthy body, your muscles are made up, they're more than 70% water. And I would say almost 100% of my clients who come to see me are underhydrated. And the first thing to go is proper muscle function, because organs and your brain and your circulation is more important than your muscles in terms of the ranking of where that water gets distributed. And so when we can increase our water intake, and I'm talking about clean water, not tap water, and you can take a look at what your water supply looks like by just going on to, I think it's the Environmental Working Group, and you put in your zip code and they'll tell you what contaminants are in your water. You want to filter those out. But drinking clean, healthy water, half of your body weight in ounces. So if you weigh 100 pounds, you need to be drinking 50 ounces of water spaced evenly throughout the day. And not many people have done that. And that's if you're a couch potato. So that's just for normal daily body function. If you start moving and exercising, you need to increase that water intake. And that's a huge
Wow.
game changer. Yeah.
Yeah, that
Every,
is. I thought I was drinking plenty of water, but I know I'm not drinking enough now. Thank you.
yeah.
That's
And
very helpful.
it also helps to remove toxins from the body. So if people do one thing after listening to this chat, if they'll just increase their water, they're going to feel so much better. And
Well, and I've gotten a little aside here because I used to be, when my father was still with us, he lived to be 96. But I was always after him to drink water because when he was in the military, they kind of trained the soldiers to go a long ways without drinking water because water was very hard to come by in wartime situation. And anyway, so that developed into a lifelong habit, kind of chronic dehydration for him. And so, anyways, but unfortunately, I would usually only remind him at night or at dinner time. And then he would say, well, if I drink more water, then I'm going to have to get up and go to the bathroom in the middle of the night.
right.
So, and I think that's probably a common concern, particularly for men and maybe for women as well. But maybe the solution to that is drink more water earlier in the day. Maybe don't drink a ton of water after dinner to where it's going to, disrupt your sleep, which you said is very important for healing
Yeah.
and kind of your body cleaning out. So again, maybe that's an area where timing could be very important.
Yes. So, what I advise people to do when you wake up in the morning, your radiator is really low. If you picture all the breathing that you're doing, respiration during the night, especially in a dry environment, we live in Colorado, that's super dry here. So, first thing in the morning, refill your radiator. So, I keep a water bottle right next to my bed and I'll drink when I wake up. And of course, I'm drinking while I'm exercising, but as I mentioned, if you space your intake evenly throughout the day and you keep an eye on it, if I have a favorite water bottle. I know how many times I need to drain it, refill it, and drink it. And as long as I'm done about 2 hours before bedtime, I'm not having to wake up during the night. But like you mentioned with your dad, dinner time, you don't want to have your catch up of all the water you didn't drink during the day. So start it early, pace yourself, and be done 2 hours before bed.
Awesome. Awesome. Debbie, are there any basic nutritional principles that you recommend that are, kind of realistic and sustainable for the average retiree?
It that's a good question, Mark, and it really depends on how people have spent their lives eating. I like to recommend whole foods, and what that means is something that's not processed. It comes from the perimeter of the grocery store. So everything in the center aisles are processed foods. The perimeter are the meats, vegetables, fruits. Um, it does mean obviously doing more home cooking, but the more plant fiber that you can consume, the healthier your gut microbiome will be, and the lower your systemic inflammation will be. So, plant fiber, obviously, fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, legumes, grains. If you happen to be someone who needs to avoid nightshades or gluten, those are very easy to Google and you probably already know things that may be triggering you. Avoid those. But I like to get my clients on a pathway. We play it like a game over the course of a week. So, not in a single day, because that can be overwhelming, but over the course of a week to try to get 30 different unique plants in your nutritional approach. I don't like the word diet because I don't like people to feel that they're deprived. But, if you have different things throughout the day, 7 days a week, it's not hard to get a variety of 30 different plants. That'll start shifting your metabolism, your digestion. If you've been dealing with any constipation, that will help. Constipation means you're not eliminating toxins, and it'll boost your energy, it'll boost your immune system, and it'll boost your mental health because the majority of our serotonin and dopamine are made by our gut microbes. And feeding them a good variety, a diverse variety of plant fiber will make their colonies happy and robust. And that in turn affects you. So that's the simplest thing. Now, if you've spent a lifetime eating red meat and potatoes, the thought of adding all these plants can be too much. So again, baby steps. If you add a new vegetable to a salad and even consider having a salad with one of your meals, those are doable, achievable baby steps. If you're already doing a robust amount of plants, great. Now work on diversity. Add new things that you've never tried before.
I love this notion of diversity, and it really, what you're proposing is very different from I'm sure that almost every listener has been on one form of diet or another. And diet means restriction, and which is why I think for me, they never work long term because you can't cut something out forever, or the notion of that is certainly daunting. But with what you're suggesting, Debbie, is really rather than restriction, the focus is more on diversity and adding new things. So people are, if anything, they're expanding their food universe of things to sample and enjoy. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and if someone says, "Well, I'm not a good cook," or "I've never been a great chef," one of my clients yesterday said, I need a recipe. I need structure. I need a set of directions. We have so many online resources now. Google something that you love to eat, and then Google show me recipes that include that. And I would say if you are going to eat animal-based products like meat or fish or poultry, please try to choose quality that has not been exposed to growth hormones, or not grown in an environment where they're really giving them tons of antibiotics because it's a massive feedlot. Because all of those things get into the animal and then get into you. And again, that can be disruptive to your gut microbiome. So unexposed meats, great. If you have a history and you love red meat, choose the one where the label describes how they're not exposed to growth hormone and antibiotics. Same with eggs.
Wow, I never thought about that. But yeah, I mean, if you're eating animals that have been fed antibiotics, that is absolutely logically going to have an impact on your gut biome because that would kill it, I would
It
think.
kills it. Exactly. And
Wow.
it can lead to antibiotic resistance in our own body because we've literally ingested their antibiotics for years and years. It's also in dairy products. So you want to be careful that you buy something. Typically, if you're getting organic, it won't have that exposure, but just do your research. I'm not saying don't eat animal products, don't drink dairy, don't eat eggs. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying purchase wisely so that you don't have those exposures. What the chickens eat will affect you.
Yeah, so focus on quality as far as that goes. That makes good sense. Debbie, there's obviously so much wellness advice out there. How can people tell the difference between what's helpful and what might be just overcomplicated or just frankly unnecessary?
There's a lot of noise. And in the holistic health space, it's flooded with people trying to sell products, sell services. I see it. It comes up in my feed on my phone all day long. I think getting back to the basics, looking at food as medicine, trying to reduce the toxins that you put in and on your body and that are in your home. Those are all things that are within our control. So, being careful about commercial cleaning products. They not only affect you, they affect your pets. Personal care products like body lotions and shampoos, all of those chemicals are getting in your body. So these are simple things that you can control. You don't have to subscribe to a massive product plan that you see on TV or on your Instagram or Facebook. Small changes make big shifts. And again, this is an individualized approach. Somebody may have a lot of toxins in their home. It's easy to just create one gigantic hefty bag and throw it all away, and then simple replacements that are clean and not going to hurt you. Guidance if someone needs some advice on how to grocery shop and get good value without the toxins, and then get started, get moving.
So it sounds like people don't necessarily need to go to Whole Foods and spend a ton of money in order. I shouldn't pick on Whole Foods, but they're an easy target. But it's not necessary to spend a ton of money to eat healthy and get quality food.
No, and there's the known kind of dirty dozen of foods that you should always buy organic, but others that have a thick skin that you can peel, you don't have to spend the money on organic for that. Um, these are easily accessible details that people can Google. Again, the Environmental Working Group has the Dirty Dozen list, and it sometimes gets updated, but it stays pretty consistent. And so, with that, for example, I always buy organic berries, even if Costco, for example, has these amazing looking blueberries, but they're not organic. I don't get them because I don't want to have to deal with trying to detox the pesticides that are on there.
Well, that makes sense. Debbie, can you share an example of someone who made small, consistent changes and saw meaningful improvements in their overall health?
Sure. I tend to have people come to see me who have been tough cases. Nothing against Western medicine. Every single person in my family is an MD. I take a little bit of a different approach. And when tough cases come to me, oftentimes it can be someone who's dealing with several different layers of autoimmunity. And the Western medical approach is to medicate that with prescriptions to deal with symptoms. I tend to dial it back a bit. I work with biofeedback with my clients. So that is literally an energetic system that balances stressors in the body, not just the stress we think about like work stress or family stress, but cellular stress. but then looking at what is triggering the autoimmunity. And that typically goes back to gut health that I mentioned before. So sometimes it takes 3 to 6 months, but when we can heal the gut microbiome and the gut lining, we can reverse these autoimmune symptoms. And that's been my most significant accomplishment, is helping people heal their guts to reduce some significant symptoms of disease and disease patterns.
Excellent. And you were talking about kind of turning back your own metabolic age.
Yeah.
Any examples with clients who have had success stories with turning back their metabolic age, generally speaking?
Yeah, so the average dial back, and it really depends on how old you are when you start doing this. The average dial back someone can see is about 7 years. I got 23 years dialed back, because I mean, I focus on all the things, and I've been doing it for decades. I was raised by a cardiologist and an endocrinologist, and while both of them went to Harvard Medical School, they never had not even a single hour of nutrition training back when they went to medical school. But my dad had a good sense of how food could be healing or poison. And so I was raised with that mentality. So yeah, I had a head start. Will everybody get a 23-year dial back? No, but every little bit counts. And so that is a focus on boosting cellular health. Vitamins are great, but if you're taking synthetic vitamins, you're basically ingesting them and then eliminating them and sending them into the wastewater plant. I work with whole food plant-based supplements that are liposomal, so that when you ingest them, they get into your bloodstream immediately and can stay there throughout the course of the day when your body needs them, because you don't just need vitamins the minute you swallow them. You need them as your body demands throughout the day. So I do quite a few things that someone starting out may not be ready to do. But again, it's a stacking of habits that starting with baby steps and working your way up.
Excellent. Thank you. And Debbie, one last question. For someone who feels like they've fallen off track, what's the best way for them to get started without feeling overwhelmed?
Don't feel defeated. Realize that any day is a good day to start and to make a correction. And again, progress is more important than perfection. If you fell off the wagon, let it go, put it behind you. And then start with one thing that you can do, that you can commit to. I love the idea of getting fiber. So I don't mean fiber from a jar at the grocery store, like Metamucil fiber. I'm talking about real plant fiber. So if you've fallen off the wagon, your weight is bad, your energy is poor, you feel just not good, you don't feel vibrant, plants are the best way to begin. And don't do 30, do 3. Get 3 things in. Hydrate. Take a walk that is reasonable for you. If that means just going around the block once, do that. Because every time you get something done and realize that you were able to do it, it's motivation to be able to continue doing things. And again, habit stacking is very easy if you start gradually. And my favorite saying is that evidence defeats disbelief. And so if you can show yourself the evidence, the disbelief will be gone and you can take the next step.
Wow, love that. Debbie, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you again, Debbie Hellman, for joining us and for sharing your insights on improving health during retirement. Debbie, before we wrap up, can you let our listeners know where they can find you and learn more about you and your services?
You bet. Best way is to just reach me by cell phone, and my number is 719-339-7676. However, be prepared because if you're not in my cell phone, I don't know how this happened, but if I don't know who you are, you won't get through. You'll just leave a message. My email address is deb@reviveandthrive.com, and that's like maryapple.tom.com. And my website is debhellman.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to the Next Chapter Retirement Podcast. And if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like and subscribe and share it with anybody who might be planning their next chapter.